The twin suns hung low in the orange sky as dust swirled across the alien marketplace. Creatures of every color and shape filled the trading square, shouting, laughing, and bargaining. The air smelled of oil, wet sand, and strange food. In the middle of all the noise stood a large green-skinned alien farmer named Grovak. His heavy voice echoed through the open air as he stood beside a rusty iron cage. "Buy a cow, get a working woman for free," he shouted with a proud grin, his voice booming over the crowd. "Strong worker, no talk back, no food demand. A perfect deal." The crowd burst into laughter. They gathered around his stand, eager to see the deal for themselves. Inside the cage sat a thin alien woman with pale skin that glowed faintly blue under the suns. Her long silver hair was tangled and messy. Her wrists were chained and her bright silver eyes stared quietly at the ground. She didn't move, didn't speak, just sat still like a broken doll. "Look at her," Grovak shouted, grabbing her arm roughly and forcing her to stand. "She's no use for me. Lazy thing. So I'm giving her away with a cow. Buy one, get one free." The laughter grew louder. Some aliens whistled, others mocked her. One of them shouted, "I wouldn't take her even for free." Grovak smirked and raised his voice again. "Who's brave enough to take this deal? A fine cow and a worthless girl." The woman's eyes glistened with shame. She turned her face away, but Grovak didn't care. He was enjoying the attention. Then the laughter slowly faded, because someone new had entered the market. A tall figure in a brown desert coat walked through the crowd, boots crushing the dust beneath his steps. His face was hidden under a metal visor, and his voice was calm but carried weight when he spoke. "I'll take her," he said. The marketplace went silent. Even the animals stopped moving. All eyes turned toward the stranger. Grovak blinked, confused. "What did you say, stranger?" The figure stepped closer. He pulled down his visor, revealing a human face, the sunburned, tired, but strong. His eyes were sharp, filled with quiet fire. "I said I'll buy her," he repeated. "Name your price." Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. "A human," one alien hissed. "What's he doing here?" Grovak frowned. A human? You want her?" He chuckled, not sure if it was a joke. "You don't even want the cow? Just the girl?" "Yes," the human said simply. "Just her." The crowd laughed again, but this time it sounded nervous. The human's voice had no fear in it, no hesitation. Grovak shook his head. "You must be crazy, human. She's not worth one credit. But if you want her, fine. Pay the price of the cow, 300 credits. The human nodded and opened a small metal pouch. He placed bright blue credit chips on the table. "Done," the crowd gasped. That was more than the price of the cow itself. Grovak blinked in disbelief. "You're serious?" The human gave a slow nod. "Free her." The farmer hesitated, his big hands twitching. "You sure you want this one? She doesn't talk much. Might run away. She's damaged goods." The human looked at the frightened woman inside the cage. "No one is damaged," he said softly. "Only forgotten." Something in his tone made the farmer uneasy. But money was money. Grovak grumbled and unlocked the cage. The chains fell with a loud clang. The woman flinched but didn't move. The human stepped closer, his expression calm. "You're free now," he told her gently. She stared at him, confused. Her voice was quiet, shaky. "Free? I don't understand," he offered his hand. "You will." The crowd stood in silence as the woman slowly took his hand and stepped out of the cage. Her legs trembled, unused to freedom. The human took off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. As they walked away, whispers filled the air again. Some laughed at him. Others just watched, not knowing what to say. Grovak stared at the credits on his table and muttered under his breath. Humans, always doing strange things. The suns dipped lower, painting the sky red and gold. The human and the silver-eyed woman disappeared into the desert road, leaving behind a silent market. No one knew it yet. But that single act, the moment a human bought freedom instead of profit, would soon shake the entire galaxy, and the farmer who once mocked her would never forget the day when a human stepped into his dusty market and changed everything. The desert wind howled softly as the suns began to fade, throwing long shadows across the dusty road. The human, Ray Carter, walked quietly beside the freed alien woman. Her silver eyes looked down, still unsure whether this was a dream or a cruel trick. The chains were gone, but the weight of her fear remained. For hours they said nothing. The only sound was the crunch of their boots on the dry ground. Finally, the woman spoke in a low voice. Why did you buy me?" Her voice trembled, filled with confusion. Ray glanced at her but kept walking. "Because no one should live in chains," he said simply. She blinked, trying to understand. "But I'm not important. I was nothing on my world. Why would a human care?" Ray stopped and turned to face her. The wind blew his coat and the fading light reflected in his eyes. "Because once I saw humans treated like this too," he said softly. "And I swore never to look away again." The woman fell silent. For the first time, someone had looked at her as a person, not a tool. They reached a small camp near a rocky hill. Ray had an old transport speeder parked there, half covered in sand. He opened a small crate, pulled out a canteen and handed it to her. She hesitated before taking it. The water tasted real, cold and pure. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated again. "Lyra," she said quietly. "My name is Lyra." "Good," Ray said. "You'll need to remember it now. You're free, Lyra." But freedom to her was an empty word. She didn't know where to go or what to do. She had no family, no friends, only memories of pain and work. "Where will I go?" she asked in a small voice. Ray thought for a moment, then said, "You'll come with me. I'm headed to Outpost 9, a few miles east. It's safe there." Lyra looked at him, confused. "You trust me that easily?" Ray smiled faintly. "I trust my gut. It's kept me alive." As the night grew darker, they sat near a small fire. The flames danced against the cold wind. Lyra stared into the firelight, her mind full of questions. She could still hear the mocking voices from the market, still feel Grovak's hand gripping her arm. But now there was silence, and beside her sat a man who had risked his money, and maybe his life, for someone he didn't know. After a while, she asked, "Why were you even there in that market?" Ray looked at the fire and sighed. "I was looking for a part. My ship's engine burned out. But when I saw you, I forgot everything else." Lyra tilted her head. "You could have walked away." "Yeah," Ray said quietly. "But I couldn't." The silence stretched between them again. The stars began to appear, glowing in strange colors across the alien sky. Lyra had never seen stars this clear before. It almost felt peaceful, but her peace didn't last long. In the distance, faint red lights blinked through the dark sky, patrol drones. Her body tensed instantly. She knew those lights too well. "Ray," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We have to move." Ray's head snapped up. "What is it?" "Drones. From the Dominion Patrol. They're looking for me." Ray grabbed his blaster and scanned the sky. The lights grew brighter. "How far?" "Too close," Lyra said, panic rising in her voice. "They'll kill us both." Ray stood and started packing up. "Not tonight," he said calmly. "Get on the speeder." Lyra obeyed, heart pounding. As the engine roared to life, the first drone beam lit up the desert behind them. Blue bolts of energy cut through the sand. Ray swerved sharply, kicking up clouds of dust. "Hold on!" he shouted. The speeder raced across the dunes, chased by glowing red eyes in the sky. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the night. Lyra clung to Ray's coat, her fear mixing with something else, a strange new feeling she hadn't felt in years. Hope. After several long minutes, the drones lost sight of them. The engine coughed, sputtered, and finally stopped near a rocky canyon. Ray jumped off, checking his blaster. "We'll rest here," he said. Lyra looked at him in awe. "You didn't have to save me again." He smiled faintly, brushing dust from his jacket. "Get used to it," he said. "Humans have a bad habit of doing what others call foolish." Lyra's eyes softened. She whispered, "Then maybe foolishness isn't so bad." The night wind blew softly through the canyon, carrying their quiet laughter away, but far above them, in the shadows of space, a dark ship watched the desert below. A cold voice spoke from its deck. "The escaped worker has been found, and now, so has the human who protects her." The hunt had begun. The canyon was silent except for the whisper of the wind and the soft hum of the cooling speeder engine. Faint orange light from the twin suns spread across the cracked stones. Ray sat near a small fire, repairing the dented blaster with calm, focused hands. Beside him, Lyra stared at the flames, her face thoughtful and afraid. Sleep had not come easily that night. Every shadow felt alive, every sound seemed to follow them. When the fire popped, Lyra flinched. Her mind was full of memories she wished she could forget. Ray noticed. "You okay?" he asked gently. Lyra nodded, though her voice shook. I didn't mean to bring danger to you. You should have left me back there." Ray leaned back against a rock. "Not my style," he said quietly. "I don't walk away from people who need help." She looked at him for a long time, her silver eyes reflecting the fire. "You don't understand who I am, Ray. If they're hunting me, it's not just because I escaped. It's because of what I know." Ray lowered his blaster and stared at her. "Then tell me, what do you know?" Lyra hesitated, fear flickering across her face. "You won't believe me." "Try me," Ray said, his tone calm but firm. She took a deep breath. "I used to work for the Dominion's research division on Zenara base. We studied something ancient, something not from this galaxy. They called it the core of Vethar. It's an energy crystal with impossible power. They wanted to use it as a weapon. I was part of the team that discovered how to activate it." Ray frowned. "And then what happened?" Her voice trembled as she continued. "They tested it, and it destroyed half the base. Thousands died. I tried to stop them, but they blamed me. They erased my name from the system and sold me off as a slave. The data, the real activation code, is still hidden in my memory implant." Ray's eyes narrowed. "You mean they put the data inside your mind?" "Yes," she whispered. "That's why they want me dead." For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying grains of sand across the stones. Ray stood and looked toward the horizon. "That explains the drones," he said. "They weren't just chasing a runaway, they were chasing a secret." Lyra nodded weakly. "If they get me, they'll finish the weapon. They'll burn worlds with it." Ray turned back to her, his voice steady. "Then we don't let that happen." Her eyes widened. "You can't fight them, Ray. The Dominion controls everything, ships, soldiers, machines. You're just one man." Ray smiled faintly, a tired but fearless smile. "One man is all it takes to make a difference." Lyra didn't know what to say. She had never met someone who spoke with such quiet strength. Most people bowed to fear. But this human seemed to stand taller when danger came closer. After a moment, she said softly, "You really are strange." Ray chuckled. "Yeah, I get that a lot." They packed their gear and prepared to move again before sunrise. As they climbed out of the canyon, the sky shifted from gold to deep blue. Far in the distance, a faint humming sound filled the air, the sound of engines. Ray stopped, scanning the horizon. "They're coming." Lyra's heart pounded. "Already?" "Yeah," Ray said. "They must have tracked our speeder signal." They ran toward the rocky hills. Ray led her into an abandoned outpost, its walls half buried in sand. Broken metal doors and shattered consoles surrounded them. "This used to be a communication relay," Ray said. "If I can power the old transmitter, we can send a signal to my ship orbiting nearby." Lyra quickly helped him connect wires and bypass power cells. Her fingers moved fast, steady, familiar with the technology. For the first time, Ray saw a glimpse of the scientist she used to be. "Done," she said after a few tense minutes. The lights flickered weakly, but the transmitter came alive. Ray typed a short code into the console. "Signal sent," he said. "My ship should respond soon." Just then, a sharp beeping noise echoed from outside. Lyra froze. Ray drew his blaster. Through the broken window, a hovering drone appeared, its red eye glowing in the dark. "Get down," Ray shouted. The drone fired. The energy blast tore through the console, exploding in sparks. Ray pushed Lyra to the ground, shielding her with his body as the room filled with smoke and dust. When the noise faded, Ray looked up. The transmitter was destroyed. Lyra coughed, covering her mouth. "Now what?" Ray's jaw tightened. "Now we run." They slipped out through a side tunnel, disappearing into the dunes as more drones descended from the clouds above. But as they fled into the night, Lyra's thoughts burned with fear and guilt. She hadn't told Ray everything. The core of Vethar wasn't just inside her memory, it was inside her. And if the Dominion ever caught her, they wouldn't need the crystal. They would use her. Darkness had fallen again over the dunes, wrapping the desert in silence. The twin suns had set, leaving only the pale blue glow of the moons. The cold wind cut through the sand like knives. Ray and Lyra had found shelter in the remains of an old transport wreck, half buried beneath the rocks. Its walls groaned softly when the wind blew. Inside, a small lantern flickered, throwing soft light on their faces. Ray sat near the doorway, his blaster resting on his lap, his eyes scanning the open desert. Lyra sat against the wall, holding a torn blanket around her shoulders. Her silver eyes reflected the lantern light, glowing faintly in the dark. For a while, neither of them spoke. Only the wind and the hum of the desert filled the silence. Finally, Lyra whispered, "They won't stop, will they?" Ray shook his head. "No, not until they get what they want." She lowered her gaze. "And what they want is me." Ray looked at her for a moment, then turned back to the desert. "Then we make sure they don't get you." There was something steady in his voice, like steel hidden beneath calm. It gave her a strange sense of comfort. For so long she had been alone, hunted and hopeless. But this human made her believe in something she thought was gone. Hope. A sudden beep from Ray's scanner broke the silence. His eyes narrowed. Movement. North Ridge. Lyra's heart jumped. Drones? He adjusted the screen. Too many for a patrol. It's a strike unit. The faint red lights appeared over the ridge like fireflies, dozens of them. Then the hum of engines grew louder. Shadows of small flying drones filled the sky, their red eyes scanning the ground. "They found us," Lyra whispered. Ray grabbed his pack. "Stay low. Move when I say." He pulled her hand and guided her through the narrow path between rocks. Energy bolts streaked past, burning holes into the sand. The drones fired in perfect rhythm, searching, hunting. Ray ducked behind an old metal wing. "Cover your ears," he said quickly, then threw a small sphere into the air. It exploded with a burst of white light, sending a shockwave that fried the nearest drones. Pieces of metal rained down like sparks. "Go," Ray shouted. They ran through the burning sand, hearts pounding. Lyra tripped, but Ray caught her before she fell. A drone swooped low, its energy cannon charging. Ray fired his blaster in one quick motion. The drone exploded mid-air, showering sparks across the dark. "Left," he yelled. They ducked behind a pile of broken machinery. Ray checked his blaster. Only a few charges left. "We can't fight them all," he muttered. Lyra's voice shook. "There's a cave ahead. I saw it when we came in." Ray nodded, taking her hand again. "Run for it!" They sprinted through the storm of red light and heat. A blast hit the ground near them, sending sand flying. Ray pushed Lyra forward, shielding her from the explosion. The shockwave threw him to the ground. "Ray!" she cried, turning back. He gritted his teeth and got up, his arm bleeding from a deep burn. "Keep going." She hesitated, then ran to him and put his arm around her shoulder. "I won't leave you." Together they stumbled into the narrow cave just as the drones circled above. The entrance was small, hidden between rocks. Inside, the air was cold and silent. Ray collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. Lyra knelt beside him, her hands shaking. "You're hurt. I'll live," he said, though his face was pale. She tore a piece of her blanket and wrapped it around his arm. The fabric soaked with blood, but she kept working. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "You could have died." Ray managed a weak smile. "Yeah, but you'd still be alive." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. "Why? Why would you risk everything for me?" He met her gaze and said quietly, "Because someone once did the same for me." Outside, the drones hovered, scanning the area. Their red lights passed over the rocks, but none found the cave's entrance. After a long while, the hum faded into the distance. Lyra sat beside him, still holding his hand. "You saved me again," she said softly. Ray chuckled weakly. "Let's call it even." She smiled through tears, and for a moment the cave didn't feel so dark. But as the wind outside carried the sound of distant engines, Lyra's expression grew heavy again. She looked at Ray, whispering, "There's something you still don't know, Ray. Something I've been hiding." Ray opened his tired eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then tell me." Lyra took a deep breath, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "The core, it's not just a crystal. It's alive, and it's inside me." The firelight flickered once and died. The desert stretched endless beneath the rising suns, painted gold and red. The wind howled softly, blowing waves of sand across the dunes. Inside the narrow cave, Ray woke first. His arm still burned with pain, but his mind was clear. He looked beside him. Lyra sat quietly, staring toward the cave's mouth, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She hadn't slept at all. Ray sat up slowly. "We have to move," he said, voice low and rough. "If they scanned this area last night, they'll come back." Lyra nodded, but didn't turn around. "They won't stop, Ray, you know that now." "I know," he replied. "That's why we have to stay ahead of them." Outside, the sun was already hot. The two stepped into the open dunes, leaving the cave behind. The sand shimmered like fire under the light, and the air rippled with heat. The wrecked transport they had used for shelter was now just a burned memory in the distance. Ray checked the map on his wrist display. "There's an abandoned trade outpost about 30 miles east," he said. "If we can reach it, I might be able to fix a signal booster." Lyra's face was pale. 30 miles? Without water? He gave a faint smile. "I've survived worse." She stared at him, her lips pressing into a thin line, then said softly, "You humans are impossible." "Good," Ray said. "That's why we usually win." They started walking. For hours, they crossed the shifting sands in silence. The desert was alive with strange sounds, whispers of wind, cracks of stone under heat, the cry of winged creatures flying high above. Each step felt heavier, each breath drier. Lyra stumbled once, catching herself on a rock. Ray quickly moved beside her, holding her steady. "Careful," he said. She gave a tired smile. "You don't have to keep saving me." Ray looked straight ahead. "Maybe I want to." For a brief moment, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile but growing. By midday, the heat became unbearable. The air shimmered so much that the horizon looked like water. Lyra's step slowed. She wiped sweat from her forehead and whispered, "Ray, I can't keep walking." He stopped, pulled his canteen from his belt and handed it to her. "Drink," she shook her head. "You need it too." "Drink," he repeated, firm but gentle. She finally took it, drinking just enough to wet her lips. Her hands trembled. Ray's own throat burned with thirst, but he didn't take it back. He simply said, "We're almost there." Hours later, when the suns began to lower, the shape of a structure appeared in the distance. Half-buried towers, metal antennas, and broken walls. The outpost. Lyra's eyes widened. "We made it." But as they approached, Ray's instincts warned him. The sand near the entrance was disturbed, tracks, fresh ones. Not animal. Not theirs. He crouched, scanning the ground. "Someone's here," he said quietly. Lyra froze. "Dominion?" "Maybe scavengers," Ray said, raising his blaster. "Stay behind me." They crept inside the ruins. The air smelled of oil and metal. Faded banners of an old trade guild hung from cracked walls. They moved through the corridors until they reached the main control room. To their surprise, the room was empty. Dust covered everything, consoles, screens, and broken panels. Ray checked the power grid, and with a few quick repairs, lights flickered weakly to life. "Can you send a signal?" Lyra asked. "Maybe," Ray said, "if the relay dish still works." While he worked, Lyra wandered to a broken window. Her eyes softened as she watched the desert wind sweep the dunes. "When I worked in the labs," she said quietly, "I never saw the sky. Not once. We lived underground, surrounded by machines. I used to dream about open air like this." Ray looked at her, then smiled faintly. "Well, now you have all the open air you want." She turned, smiling weakly back. "And all the running to go with it." Before Ray could reply, his scanner beeped, loud and sharp. His face turned serious. "Drones again?" Lyra asked quickly. He nodded. "Too close. They tracked us." The ground began to rumble softly. From the far side of the dunes, shapes appeared. Hovercrafts moving fast, kicking up storms of sand. Ray grabbed Lyra's hand. "We're leaving now." They ran through the back exit, sand whipping around them. Behind them, blaster fire tore through the walls of the outpost. The air filled with the smell of burning metal. A hovercraft dived low, firing again. Ray aimed and shot one of its engines. The craft exploded, crashing into the dunes. Lyra stumbled, but Ray pulled her along. "Keep moving," he shouted. They dove behind a fallen tower just as the second craft fired. The explosion shook the ground. Sand rained over them. Lyra coughed, gasping. "We can't keep running forever, Ray." He looked at her, his expression grim but determined. "Then we stop running." Lyra frowned. "What do you mean?" Ray pointed toward the horizon where storm clouds began to form. Massive, glowing orange clouds. "That's not weather. That's an old storm generator from the war. If we can reach it, we can turn it on." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "That would tear apart everything in its range." Ray checked his blaster, then met her gaze. "Exactly." Lyra's breath caught. The human wasn't just trying to survive, he was planning to fight back. And for the first time, she realized that the man who saved her wasn't just kind. He was dangerous, brave, and completely unstoppable. The storm clouds on the horizon grew darker as Ray and Lyra pushed through the endless dunes. The wind had turned fierce. tossing sand into their faces and stinging their skin. The glowing orange clouds above flickered with lightning, lighting up the desert for brief seconds like bursts of fire. Ray walked ahead, scanning the distance through his cracked visor. "We're close," he said, shouting over the wind. "The old war generator should be near that ridge." Lyra followed behind, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She could feel something strange in the air, an energy, humming through the sand, whispering to her like a voice she couldn't quite understand. Every step she took made her heart pound faster, as if the storm itself was calling her name. They reached a metal hatch buried halfway under the dunes. Rusted symbols of an old military base covered its surface. Ray wiped off the sand and pulled at the handle. It groaned loudly but opened. Inside, the air was cold and stale. The corridor was dimly lit by flickering emergency lights that had somehow survived centuries. Ray stepped in first, blaster ready. "Stay close," he said. Lyra nodded, clutching the side of the wall as they walked deeper into the underground base. The walls were lined with strange machines, broken wires, and screens covered in dust. The storm outside roared louder, shaking the ceiling with every gust. Finally, they entered a large circular chamber. At its center stood a tall metal tower surrounded by blue energy coils. Faded warning signs glowed weakly. "Storm field generator, do not activate." Ray stopped and stared up at it. "There it is," he said. "If I can power this thing, it'll create a sandstorm strong enough to blind their scanners and tear apart their ships." Lyra looked uneasy. "That could kill us too." Ray smiled faintly. "Yeah, but it'll save everyone else." Before Lyra could respond, her body stiffened. A sharp pulse of pain shot through her chest and she gasped, dropping to her knees. "Lyra!" Ray shouted, rushing to her side. She clutched her chest, her silver eyes glowing brighter, so bright they illuminated the dark chamber. "It's reacting," she whispered. "The storm, the energy here, it's calling to the core inside me." Ray froze. "You mean, it's alive," she said through heavy breaths. "The core of Vethar. It's not just data. It's a living force. When I was a scientist, we thought it was just energy. But it thinks. It feels." Ray's mind raced. "And now it's waking up?" Lyra nodded weakly. "It's merging with the storm's field. I can feel its heartbeat." The lights in the room began to flicker faster. The energy coils around the generator glowed, then hummed with power even though no one had turned it on. Ray stared in disbelief. "It's responding to you." Lyra's voice trembled. "Because I am its vessel. They didn't implant the data in me, Ray. They planted the core itself." Ray's heart pounded. "Then we need to control it before it controls you." But before he could move, the sound of engines echoed through the tunnel. Red light flooded the corridor. Dominion troops had arrived, tall armored aliens with glowing visors and heavy weapons. "Targets located," a mechanical voice called out. "Eliminate the human. Retrieve the host." Ray grabbed his blaster and fired first. The blue bolts hit 2 soldiers, knocking them back. The others opened fire, filling the chamber with energy blasts. Sparks flew across the walls. Lyra cried out, covering her head. Her eyes flared brighter, and suddenly the air vibrated around her. Every light in the chamber exploded in a flash. The soldiers screamed as their weapons melted in their hands. Ray shielded his face from the burst of light. When it faded, Lyra was floating slightly above the ground, her silver hair moving like waves, her skin glowing like metal. The generator behind her roared to life. "Lyra!" Ray shouted. "You need to stop, you're overloading it." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I can't. It's using me." Ray ran to her, grabbed her shoulders, and shouted, "Then fight it. You're not a weapon, you're Lyra." Her eyes met his, full of fear and pain. "Ray," she whispered, "I'm sorry." A shockwave burst from her body, shaking the entire chamber. The soldiers were thrown into walls. The generator surged with light, its coils spinning wildly. Ray held onto her tightly as the energy built to a scream. "Listen to me. You're stronger than it. You can control it." Lyra's lips trembled. "Only if I let go of everything else." Ray's heart sank. "Don't you dare." But before he could say another word, she placed her hand on the generator's core. The light exploded outward, swallowing the entire base in white fire. When the brightness faded, the Dominion troops were gone, their ships torn apart by the raging storm outside. And in the middle of the ruined chamber, Ray stood alone, his hair covered in dust, his arm still reaching toward the spot where Lyra had been. The storm outside screamed across the desert, and lightning flashed in the sky. But deep within the light, a soft, glowing silhouette of Lyra appeared for a moment, smiling sadly before fading into the storm. The storm had raged all night. Thunder rolled across the dunes like the roar of ancient beasts. Lightning flashed again and again, lighting up the desert in bursts of white and gold. When morning finally came, silence fell. The wind calmed, the sand settled, and what was once chaos became still. Ray Carter lay half-buried in the golden sand, his coat torn, his body bruised. Slowly, painfully, he opened his eyes. The air was heavy with the scent of burned metal and ozone. The storm generator was gone, reduced to twisted metal buried under the dunes. He pushed himself up, coughing. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice breaking. He looked around, but there was nothing. Only the endless desert. For a long time he didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the horizon where the twin suns rose again, their light reflecting off the sand like fire. His heart felt heavy, yet deep down something told him she wasn't gone. Not completely. He remembered her last words. "Only if I let go of everything else." Ray clenched his fist. "You didn't just let go. You saved them all." In the distance, pieces of Dominion ships were scattered like broken toys. The storm had torn them apart, leaving only ruins and silence. The once mighty fleet that had hunted Lyra was now nothing more than dust and wreckage. Ray stood and began walking. Each step was slow, but he didn't stop. He followed the trail of melted sand until he reached a shallow crater glowing faintly blue. At its center lay a small, pulsating crystal, the core of Vethar. It shimmered softly like it was breathing. He knelt beside it. "So you're what they feared," he said quietly. "But you were never just power, were you?" The crystal pulsed once, and for a brief moment a faint holographic image appeared. Lyra's face, peaceful and smiling. "Ray," her voice whispered, gentle like the wind. "The core is part of me now. I'm still here, watching." Ray's throat tightened. "You don't have to keep fighting. It's over." "I know," she said, "but the galaxy needs peace. I can help bring it. Don't mourn me, Ray. Live for both of us." The light faded and the crystal dimmed, but the warmth in the air remained. Ray held it carefully in his palm, his eyes soft but steady. "You did it, Lyra," he said. "You made them see that not all power destroys." He placed the crystal inside a small containment case and started walking toward the east, where the old starport ruins lay. Hours later, an alien patrol ship flew low over the dunes. It landed near him, and a group of alien soldiers stepped out, different from the Dominion. Their armor bore the symbol of the Galactic Union, not the empire that once enslaved Lyra. Their leader, a tall, blue-skinned officer, stepped forward. "Human," he called out. "Are you Ray Carter?" Ray nodded slowly. "Who's asking?" "We received a transmission before the storm hit," the officer said. A woman's voice. She said a human saved her world. Ray looked down at the desert, then back at the officer. "She saved all of us." The officer hesitated, then bowed his head. "Then the Union owes you a debt." Ray shook his head. "Don't thank me, just remember her." The officer's gaze softened. "The entire galaxy will. The Dominion's fleets have fallen silent. Their command centers lost contact after the storm. Rumors are spreading about the human who stood against them and the alien woman who became light itself." Ray said nothing. He just looked out across the sand. Somewhere he thought he could still hear Lyra's laughter in the wind. The officer gestured toward the ship. "Come with us. The council wants to meet you." Ray took a deep breath, then glanced once more at the horizon. "I'll come," he said, "but I'm not here to be a hero. I just want peace." As the ship lifted into the air, the twin suns rose higher, shining across the endless desert. The storm was gone, but its mark remained, a reminder that one act of compassion had changed everything. Across the galaxy, news spread of the event. Planets once divided by fear began to talk. The story of a single human who risked everything for one alien woman became a legend. They called it the day the storm spoke, and in every retelling there was always one final line, spoken softly but remembered by all. He didn't conquer worlds. He changed hearts. As the ship vanished into the sky, the sand glowed faintly one last time. Deep beneath the surface, the core of Vethar pulsed once more, like a heartbeat, before falling silent. The galaxy would never be the same again.